Welcome to Nexion, the place where history comes alive. Here, we dive deep into the forgotten corners of war, courage, betrayal, and survival. Every story we tell is not just about battles, but about the human spirit caught in the chaos of history. Today, we bring you a chilling tale from the Atlantic during World War II, a story of steel against steel, of a destroyer that rammed a German U-boat, and of men left struggling in the cold, merciless waters. This is not just a story of ships and strategy, it is a story of survival, morality, and the harsh truths of naval warfare. Part 1. Shadows Beneath the Waves. World War II was not only fought on land and in the skies, beneath the oceans. Another kind of battle raged, a silent war between German U-boats and the Allied convoys they hunted. The Atlantic Ocean became a graveyard for thousands of ships and sailors. The German U-boats, short for Unterseeboot, were stealthy predators. They lurked beneath the waves, invisible and deadly, striking merchant ships that carried food, fuel, and weapons to Britain. For Churchill, the British Prime Minister, the U-boat menace was the greatest threat to Allied survival. He once admitted, "The only thing that really frightened me during the war was the U-boat peril." Against this menace stood the destroyer's fast, heavily armed escort ships tasked with protecting convoys. They were the hunters of the hunters, equipped with sonar, depth charges, and deadly ramming tactics. They were the sharp edge of Allied naval defense. It was in this unforgiving battlefield, the North Atlantic, that our story unfolds. Part 2. A Deadly Encounter. The night was cold, the sea restless, and the moon hidden behind thick clouds. A convoy of merchant ships was making its way across the Atlantic, escorted by Royal Navy destroyers. Among them was HMS Hesperus, for example, a real British destroyer involved in anti-U-boat actions. Her crew had been trained to detect and destroy submarines lurking nearby. Below the surface, a German U-boat, let's call it U-30 fictional placeholder, as there were multiple real cases, shadowed the convoy. Its commander, a young Captain Lieutenant, was determined to strike. He had orders: sink as many merchant ships as possible, cut Britain's lifeline, and bring the war to its knees. But hunting convoys was dangerous. The U-boat captain knew that every torpedo launched was like ringing a dinner bell for the destroyers above. And then it happened. A sharp-eyed lookout on the destroyer spotted something, a faint periscope trail cutting across the waves. The alarm was raised. The destroyer roared to life. Engines thundered, searchlights cut through the darkness, and depth charges were armed. The crew braced themselves. Somewhere beneath them, a steel predator was waiting. Part 3. The Chase. The U-boat, realizing it had been detected, dove deep. The captain ordered alarm. Crash dive. Within seconds, the submarine plunged into the black depths, its hull creaking under the pressure. Inside, red lights glowed dimly, the air thick with diesel fumes and sweat. Above, the destroyer dropped its first pattern of depth charges. The ocean shook with thunderous explosions. Metal screamed as shockwaves hammered the submarine. Lights flickered, gauges rattled, and men were thrown from their bunks. The U-boat twisted and turned, trying to escape. But the destroyer was relentless. Sonar pings echoed through the deep, tracking every move. Another wave of depth charges tore the sea apart. The submarine shuttered pipes burst, compartments flooded. Men screamed as the ocean clawed at their steel coffin. Finally, the captain realized escape was impossible. He had only one chance: left surface and fight. Part 4. The Ram. The U-boat broke the surface, its conning tower rising like a wounded beast. The crew scrambled onto the deck, manning anti-aircraft guns, firing desperately into the night. But against the destroyer's speed and firepower, it was hopeless. The captain of the destroyer made a bold decision. Instead of wasting time with gunfire, he ordered a ramming maneuver. The bow of the destroyer cut through the waves like a blade, aiming straight for the submarine. The impact was brutal. Steel tore against steel. The destroyer's hull smashed into the U-boat, crushing its deck, ripping open its pressure hull. The ocean swallowed into the sea as the submarine rolled violently. Some of its crew managed to escape, leaping into the freezing Atlantic waters. Others went down with their ship, entombed forever beneath the waves. The battle was over. The destroyer had triumphed. But what happened next is what makes this story unforgettable. Part 5. Left in the water. The U-boat survivors clung desperately to wreckage, their bodies shivering in the icy waters. Their eyes pleaded for mercy as they looked up at the destroyer's deck, where sailors peered down at them. But the order came: do not rescue them. In that brutal war, rescuing enemy submariners was often forbidden. Picking them up meant endangering the destroyer's lowing down, exposing itself to other lurking U-boats, risking the safety of the convoy. So the destroyer sailed on, leaving the men to the sea. One by one, the cries grew faint. The Atlantic took them. The cold, the waves, and exhaustion silenced their voices. They had fought bravely, but in the end, they were just shadows swallowed by the ocean. Part 6. The Aftermath. For the sailors aboard the destroyer, the victory was bittersweet. They had done their duty, protected their convoy, and destroyed a deadly enemy. Yet many could not forget the sight of men struggling in the water, abandoned to their fate. In the war logs, it was recorded as a successful kill. Another U-boat destroyed. Another threat neutralized. But for the families of the German crew, there was only silence. They would receive letters that their sons, husbands, or brothers were missing at sea. No grave, no closure, just the endless ocean. Part 7. The moral question. This incident raises a haunting question. Was it right to leave them? War is never simple. On one hand, the destroyer's captain had a duty to protect his convoy. Stopping to rescue survivors could have endangered hundreds of lives. On the other hand, leaving men to die in the sea goes against every instinct of human compassion. This was the cruel reality of the Battle of the Atlantic. Choices were made not in black and white, but in shades of gray. Duty clashed with morality. Survival clashed with mercy. Part 8. Echoes of the Deep. Today, decades later, the wrecks of many U-boats still lie at the bottom of the Atlantic. They are silent tombs, untouched by time. Divers who visit them describe an eerie stillnesses, if the sea itself remembers the men who perished there. Naval historians continue to debate the decisions made in those desperate battles. Some call the ramming tactic ruthless, but necessary. Others call it a tragedy of war. But one thing is certain: the men on both sides fought with courage. The destroyer crew who braved the deadly seas to protect their convoys. The U-boat sailors who went down into the depths, knowing their chances of survival were slim. They were enemies, but also brothers of the sea. Part 9. Conclusion for viewers. And that, dear viewers of Nexion, is a story of a destroyer that rammed a U-boat and left its crew in the unforgiving waters of the Atlantic. It is a story of steel and sacrifice, of duty and morality, of choices made in the heat of battle that echo through history. When we study these stories, we are not just learning about war, we are learning about humanity, about the choices people make when survival is at stake, about the thin line between duty and compassion. The ocean keeps its secrets, but stories like this remind us of the cost of war, not just in ships and steel, but in human lives. Thank you for watching Nexion. If you found this story powerful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And remember, history is not just about the past. It's about us today, and the choices we may one day face.